So I think there are a lot of different aspects to that analysis. I do believe, as someone who was very proud to serve over the last 5 or 6 years, in particular as an MPP, again, as I said a second ago, there was quite a bit that we accomplished, quite a bit of progress that we made here in the province. I gave a bit of a list. The list is even longer than that, as you know. I think one of the things that was tough for a lot of voters to deal with was that they felt that on cost of living anxieties, the pressures that people feel every single month when they're paying their bills and they're trying to keep the lights on and paying their mortgage and everything else, I think there was a feeling that perhaps our government wasn't paying close enough attention to how we invested the hard-earned tax dollars of the people that we represent. I'll tell you, and this was in my open letter and the video that I put out last week when I announced that I would be a candidate for the leadership. I grew up here in the GTHA. I've spent all of my life in Ontario, but my parents and grandparents were not born here. Like so many others I'm sure in this audience today, my dad came from Italy in 1958. My mom came from Scotland in 1961. They met here. Different countries of origin, different religious faiths. They met here, they fell in love, they got married, they started a family. In all the years that I've spoken to my parents about what it was like in those earliest days, months and years, they said to me, and they still say to me over and over again, one thing. They knew that success was not guaranteed. They knew that there were no guarantees in life, but they also knew that this province and country gave them a fair shot and gave them real opportunity. And if they were prepared to work hard and sacrifice, roll up their sleeves, and be determined, and not get knocked down, play by the rules, that they would do okay. And they have. And it's those values that they passed on to me and my siblings. Those are the kind of values that my wife and I are trying to pass on to our kids. But one of the most fundamental aspects of that value set is that they worked hard for their money. They went to work, they paid their bills, they invested in things that mattered for our family, buying a decent home, investing in their kids' education and recreation activities, and always expecting government to do its part, not to fix every problem under the sun, but to get the big things right: healthcare, education, the environment, jobs in the economy, and so much more. So I think the #1 rule for Liberals at all times is to remember that people work hard for their money, and that we need to invest their hard-earned dollars in a way that they can respect and see as responsible, just like they do month to month. And that's one of the key points, I think, for our rebuild and modernization.
Ontario is in debt like 350, and the second state in North America which is in debt is California, which is carrying half of the debt of Ontario. Liberals had the plan of the economy was going into the debt again, as Catherine Wynne did that. And the Conservatives are short in budget too. How do you differentiate yourself, I mean the Liberal, from the Conservatives, who also are going to have more deficit in their budgets?
So thank you. I think the one thing, and I said this right off the top today, right at the start today, cast your mind back to the last election campaign. At every single stop, including here in York Region, Doug Ford would get off his bus, he would turn around and say that, you know, Ontario is a financial basket case, and there's tons of really hard decisions he's going to have to make, and we're going to get us back on it, and we're going to balance the books, and Liberals were irresponsible. Okay, the people voted last year. They delivered their judgment, like I said a second ago. Now we see his first budget, and what did I tell you today right off the top? He's spending, or he proposes to spend, $5 billion more than we had proposed to spend in our last budget, the budget that we introduced in the legislature in the spring of 2018. $5 billion more. And yet, and by the way, not have a path to return to balance for 5 years, far longer than he said would be the case when he was looking for your vote. $5 billion, I said it earlier, never has a premier or a government spent so much to deliver so little for you and your families. Cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, damages to the environment, cuts to transit, across the board, and so much more. Sure, and some of Michael and some of my colleagues here today talked a lot of gimmicks in this budget. A A lot of things designed to try and distract us. A license plate, tailgating, alcohol that will be easier to buy. And by the way, alcohol that will be easier to drink in community parks. I mean, that's one of the little stories out of yesterday's budget. And I say this as the father of an 11-year-old and 7-year-old daughter whose home is near a park. And when I parked my car here today and walked to the front door, I could hear children's voices from not too far away. So there must be a park or a school that's not that far away from us here today. Imagine a world where Doug Ford wants it to make it easier for people to drink alcohol in community parks where our kids play. So my point on the fiscal side, on the economy, on the numbers side is, Doug Ford likes to talk a good game when he wants your vote, but he is not living up to what he said last year to the people of Ontario. I do believe fundamentally, and I believe Liberals believe fundamentally, in investing in ways that are responsible with hard-earned tax dollars. And in a perfect world, yes, of course, our budget would be balanced every single year. And I don't say that because it's important to satisfy accountants or bond rating agencies, though that's important too. I say it for two reasons. One, Ontario, despite our very strong economy and our extremely talented workforce, is still by population a relatively small part of the world. And we know that we live in an integrated global economy. We know that whether it's renegotiating NAFTA or who wins the next presidential election in the States, or Brexit, or what's happening in Asia, we know that stuff that happens in other places around the world has an impact on our economy here in Canada and here in Ontario. When bad things happen in the global economy and we're in a tough spot, our province needs to have the room and the resources to invest in things to keep our economy going. It's what happened in 2008. And we had the room because Liberals had balanced the books in Ontario and had a surplus. So number one, it's important to be responsible and at balance or close to balance so that you can respond to what's happening around the world, the turbulence. And secondly, because I think it's really important to demonstrate that you are keeping faith with people who are working hard in their own lives to earn the money that they have, to spend their money responsibly, and to demonstrate that you, as their government, are competent with their money. And what we saw yesterday from Doug Ford and his government is not competent. It's not at all. It's a whole bunch of gimmicks over here to distract you and your family from the real damage that he's doing in healthcare, in education, on the environment, and in our economy. As Liberals, we will focus on progress and results. It's what we always do. We'll have a responsible plan to return to balance that makes sense. And I'm sure in the coming months and years, we'll have more to say about exactly what that plan looks like.
Can you comment about the Doug Ford government's municipality changes? For example, you're the victim of their changes. Otherwise, you would not be in jail now. So, what's your opinion about that? Will we change? Because most of the councillors, mayors in your region or other region, they are afraid to lose jobs.
So we've already seen the, thank you, we've already seen the results. Obviously everybody here knows that Doug Ford slashed Toronto City Council from what would have been 47 down to 25, and he and his government said it was all about saving money. We've seen the initial reports coming out of Toronto. In fact, the budget that is used by council is actually going to likely cost more at 25 councillors than would have been the case at 47. I know that Doug Ford's government's doing a review of regional governance in municipalities. I've talked to municipal leaders here in York Region and beyond. There's a lot of nervousness and anxiety about what the review will ultimately announce. I'm going to wait and see what comes back. I know the two individuals, Ken Sealing and Michael Fenn, who are leading the review. They are both accomplished, respected people who I know I've been doing a lot of consultation with different municipalities. I know they're going to produce a very strong report. I'm going to wait and see what's in the report. Here's what I will say though, and I touched upon this a second ago when I talked about competence. I have faith in our communities and our municipal leaders, mayors like Frank Scarpitti and Maurizio Bevilacqua and John Tory and Bonnie Crombie and so many others. I have faith in their ability to work hard to represent their communities in a competent way. So far, what I've seen in about 10 months from Doug Ford and his friends, I have absolutely no faith that they will take the results of the report and implement them in a competent way, in a way that won't harm you as a residential property taxpayer or as a business property taxpayer. So I'm going to wait and see what that final report says and what they decide to do with it. But rest assured, if their behavior and performance over the last 10 months is any indication, what they decide to ultimately implement will not be done well.
Hi, Stephen. Next question.
What's your comments about the provincial government taking over the TTC?
So there's no doubt that the provincial government has more money and has more capacity to invest directly when they own the asset. But to me, this goes right back to the competence issue. The question becomes, for me, is Doug Ford wanting to take over the TTC because it's the best way to build transit in the shortest period of time? Or is he wanting to take over the TTC because he's still trying to settle old scores from his time on Toronto Council, because he wants control over where the TTC is going to build, or because of some other reason? What makes me most nervous, again, having lived in the GTHA my whole life, we need transit solutions now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years. If there was a leader, and this is not a partisan comment, regardless of the party, who actually had a plan that could start to be implemented tomorrow, next week, even next month, that would make your commute just a little bit easier, or more affordable, or more reliable. I don't care if that leader is part of the Conservative team, or the New Democrats, or the Liberals. As a lifelong commuter in the GTA, I'd be the first one to support that plan and applaud. Here's my concern about what they announced 2 years ago. I said this earlier. It's lines on a map. If you're standing waiting for a bus on Highway 7, the line on the map that was behind Doug Ford 2 days ago is not getting you home to your children any quicker, right? As you're seeing transit fares continue to go up every single year, it's not making it any more affordable for you. If you're stuck on the 404 or the 400 or Highway 7 or any of our forget major arterial roads, even private residential roads, which are jammed with traffic every single rush hour and beyond rush hour now. Every single person living in the GTHA and beyond needs to hold every level of government to account for what will you build, how much more reliable and affordable will you make transit, and what can you get done quickly. My other big fear is that by going into a discussion and debate over who owns what, who's in charge of what, who's sitting in the big chair making the decisions, there's going to be a lot of churn, a lot of fighting between different levels of government. The more fighting,